bro?
Yeah, pretty good. Yeah, pretty good.
Very good.
Pretty good. It didn't matter that I handed in my internship stuff late.
What do you mean?
like the first assignment was supposed to be handed in before the actual internship. And I
Yeah.
handed it in just then, which was like 3 weeks in, and I still got like a HD or whatever on it.
Oh yeah, that's fresh.
I don't know. I was like, fucking cool. I'll take it. Thanks, Steve.
All right, we'll get started in like 5 to 10 minutes. Just see if anyone else
Cool.
like comes and joins.
What the What?
Do you guys just kind of want to hack something? If like there's not really going to be anyone new coming right now.
I mean, I'm easy.
Yeah, I don't mind.
I don't know.
Could be
I've been doing AD. I've been doing AD stuff all day.
Oh yeah,
Fucking
yeah.
annoying.
Yeah.
Like it took me like 2 hours to get LDAP search to work how I wanted it to, but then I figured it out. You know,
Yeah.
it's all in the learning
It
experience.
can be like pain in the ass sometimes.
Yeah, because if you want to authenticate, you have to do tag capital W, otherwise it doesn't ask for a password. And it's like, well, fuck you, LDAP search.
It's ridiculous.
But you learn, you get there, man.
Pretty much. I like to use a lot of like Impackets tools. I forget.
Yep.
What exactly?
Get Windows, get AD users or something. There's
Yeah.
something similar. Yeah. No, it's so
'Cause-
much easier.
Yeah. It's like
Yeah.
the syntax of LDAP search, it's just so frustrating to type out on the command line every time.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And then remember it too.
Yeah.
Like the
So-
next time you need it.
It's like kind of easier just to use Impacket. But
Yeah, no shit.
then again, like it's nice to have your custom little scripts.
Yeah, true.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I think they've given me a lot of time in the lab, so I'm spending it just like figuring out what I like, which has been really nice.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
fresh. I like that.
because it's like just figuring out like what is actually works well for me, because that's kind of what I do with OSCP, and it definitely
Mm,
works. Yeah.
that's sick. Mm. All right, so what? Hello, hello. Yeah. I'll hopefully. I've never actually. Wait. Here we go. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
I can. One sec. Yeah, I can. Yep.
Is it just disk?
Yep.
All right, sweet. And when I do that, Discord.
Yep.
All right, sweet. Perfect. All right. So my idea for tonight is we're kind of going to go through some like basics of web hacking, and then we're going to look at one of the Angstrom CTF challenges. It was a kind of weird, like logic-y sort of challenge, which I found really interesting. Um, yeah, let's get started. So, welcome to Disc 2021. Um, who are we? Slash the team. So I'm the president, Jeremy or Zesh. Our treasurer is Zach or Scott Morrison, MP. Or Scott Morrison. Just I call him ScoMo. It's pretty good. And then our secretary is Jordan. Jordan, I'm so sorry. I can never remember how to say your name.
Lycerus, yeah, pretty much that.
Or I don't want to try it because I know I'm gonna screw it up again.
Fair enough.
But that's okay. Anyways, you can find us on the Slack or Discord under those names. Slack, best way to sort of get in contact with most of us, but we're slowly moving to Discord. And yeah, as you know, we're on Discord now, and I think it's pretty sweet. So yeah, give it a share around to people that you know are into like disc or hacking stuff, really anything. Because like the more sort of people we have in here, the more sort of engagement we can bring to disc, and I think it would just be sweet. Immersive Labs, it's a good spot for starters. I don't really know if anyone tonight in here needs that, but it's always kind of good to get done. Our website, we're thinking of redoing this soon. If anyone has any ideas for like the design that we should actually use, or just like any, I guess, ideas just in general about like what they want to see on the website, any bit of like knowledge is appreciated. Um, we also have our knowledge base. Sorry, but we have our knowledge base, and we're going to be slowly adding some stuff. We're going to start off with some Angstrom stuff, and then yeah, sort of get it built up on some basic challenges. Hopefully, some I don't know, just cool hacks can go on there and cool defenses. Just everything. It would be sick. So hack the box. Um, yeah, we just hack stuff. It's haven't been too active on there as of recently, so I'm not exactly too sure what the boxes are like these days. But it's a pretty good platform to get started on, since you kind of just get thrown into a massive vulnerable laboratory. But nothing like OSCP, but that's okay. Um, so yeah, this is how to be a web hacksaw, the basics of web CTF. So to be a web hacker, You don't really need a lot. Well, you don't need a lot, but like, I don't know, just as long as you have a laptop, you're sweet. But like, what is web? How do I hack on the web? Um, yeah, I'm sure you have used Google in the past. Um, it's one of my favorite tools personally. I know that's cringy to say, but I think it's a requirement for almost any web talk. That Google's like one of your biggest allies. Well, when it comes to pwning shit. Sorry. Um, but yeah, so websites. What do websites do? Well, a website might like be your bank or something like that, or it might be a file upload, something like that, like your profile picture or something. Or maybe it's a document editing service and you upload your own PDFs, and there's some sort of magical breakout that you can do with that. I don't know, it would be sick. But yeah, they come in all different types of languages. So we have PHP, Python, Node. Those are sort of the three most popular. I should say backend frameworks. You get a lot of custom like Java applications, and they're disgusting. I hate them with a passion, but yeah, it's fine. Um, to be fair, also, you have Windows like C Sharp or ASP.NET. I think it is, or ASPX. Yeah, extensible. I can't say that word right now. Um, yeah, but that's like the Windows kind of version of PHP. It's much worse, and I think it should die, but that's fine. You want to be kind of making use of public exploits, because a lot of the time in CTFs you'll see kind of just intentionally vulnerable like plugins on a website, or say you have a WordPress or Joomla site, and it's a super outdated version. You can quickly look up a public exploit for it and then pwn it, and boom, you have flags. Like, it's that easy. But yeah, sometimes it's a little bit more difficult. Sometimes the public exploits aren't so public, and there's little to no research about them out there. Sometimes you might have to go into like Packetstorm or something like that. Then you see like a week before the CTF, there was a like Mad O Day dropped or something. Yeah. Or one day dropped, and you might have to use that for the CTF. But as an example, sort of down here, we just have an example of PHP. And look, even before getting into web security, you can see that that's bad. Well, I hope you can see that that's bad, because you're executing a query of a database, and that's the actual code that's being executed. But you're just giving that from a request. So in PHP, the way you get data from the user, it's not so self-explanatory, but it is once you sort of understand the global variables. And that just means that it's a post request. So say you've opened up a search form, you've typed in a number or like a name of a user, and say the number is 1, and we're going to be putting that into the form. Say we type the number 1 into Google, we press search, and then it executes this query with the number 1 right there. Now, if we change that to something bad, what's going to happen? Who knows? Maybe we can get flags. But that's the sort of stuff that you got to be thinking about. I don't know. It's more of a just kind of look and just see what's interesting about the app. Anyways, um, yeah. So you just sort of gotta hack it if you're gonna hack something. I don't really know what else to tell you. You want to look at the logic of the web application. So, like, say if you're kind of performing a like a password reset, let's say, how's it actually going to look from a logical perspective? Like, will you have to input a password, and then what's the backend system going to do? Is it going to take that password, hash it, and then check it against a database? Or is it just going to take a password from the database and then check that against the password that we have, or is it gonna, like, I mean, email or password, whatever. You sort of get the idea, like, what's the actual logical steps behind the request that you're making on the web server, and that's what you sort of want to consider when you're kind of getting into web hacking. It's just that logical mindset. Um, so you also want to have some sort of understanding of reading code or writing code, like from our previous slide. I really hope you could understand that, and like maybe why that's bad. But having just at least some basics, it's almost essential for it. You want good word lists. That's like number one. So my go-to personally is SecLists, as it's just got a massive kind of curated list of high quality word lists, I should say. Um, and yeah, you can fuzz a lot of things with them. I found some pretty cool vulnerabilities using them, and it's kind of surprising since how wide use they are. But they're good for CTFs, because a good CTF, you shouldn't be hunting around for the vulnerability. It should be there, and you should have to fight the actual like defenses, and you shouldn't have to hunt for it. But they're always handy to have just in case you are hunting for it. Now, Burp Suite, number one, the best, right? The best. It's pretty much your toolkit for like everything like website related. So, for example, I got my Burp open right now. You know, it's sweet. We're about to start hacking, so yeah, it's fantastic. I'll discuss it later. So, yeah, what Burp Suite does essentially is it's a proxy. So you get your requests and whatnot, and then you proxy it through Burp, and you can edit them, you can replay them, you can fuzz with Burp. It's really just like the Swiss Army knife networking. Um, so yeah, you can actually use Burp to find the thing, and really that's what Burp is used for most cases, and like quickly making little exploits and like testing them out. It's a really handy tool. But there's a lot of other tools out there that are free and open source that you can actually use to either find the thing or hack the thing. Um, yeah, but Burp Suite, number one go-to for web hacking, number one. So reading code, yeah, it's. I hope you can read the kind of Python I kind of janked together on the left there, but it's really basic. You can see that there's like a variable being assigned to the user, kind of name, I guess, and then we're taking that from another variable called request.json. And while that's not self-explanatory in itself, you can understand that it's getting sort of some sort of JSON value and then storing it as the user variable. And then if the user.id, so we can assume there that the JSON has to require is required to contain that ID, and as long as that's equal to 1, we get the flag, because it returns you the flag. But if it's equal to anything else or it doesn't exist, we don't get a flag. It's as simple as that. And then up on the right, this is a little bit more complicated. Well, it's actually a lot simpler, but it just looks more complicated. It's just a really basic if statement here. So we can read that it's an if statement, and then we see null. So it's like null, nothing. So if nothing is equal to the name parameter, because like with PHP, that's sort of your global like get query string. So you can have like a URL and then question mark A equals B, and then you can use like $ get and then A, and it will return you the value of B. So it kind of makes sense. But yeah, you can see how like you can just read that, right? So what's happening here is this is a shorthand if statement, and that's where things get kind of tricky, because to minify code and like to just make it cleaner, a lot of the time you'll see these shorthand if statements, and they're really, really handy little like kind of things. But there's a lot of other sort of handy little things that you'll pick up after either more writing code or like more hacking stuff. You'll just sort of pick it up. But yeah, we can see that this is in brackets, right? So if nothing is equal to the name, then this is going to be equal to this. So what's happening there is we're actually checking if there's no value in the name parameter, and then we're setting it if no value exists to the value of guessed exclamation mark space. Otherwise, if there is a value provided by the name parameter of the get query string, then it's just going to be appended straight there, and we don't actually need this because this check will fail and then it will just ignore that. And then yeah, it will be like, hello, welcome, script alert document.domain, and then boom, you can weaponize your payload from there. But yeah, so that's where sort of having an understanding of the basics of reading code comes into play. I highly suggest either writing some custom like web apps or just sort of coding and having fun with random apps. Like that's your number one. Logic, like I said earlier, we had that little bit of logic. So this is where that logical mindset comes into play of kind of understanding like what the code's actually doing and sort of like the actual logic behind it. Now, this isn't the logic behind this. I just had this here and then I found a quick logic image on Google. But you can see just how simple like logic stuff is. Like, is this loop at its last item? And then if it's not, it prints it and then goes back. Otherwise, it just stops the loop. And that's where it starts, it goes around, it goes around, it goes around, then it stops, right? It's really simple logic. And then here, it's just simple logic again, but just in the case of an if statement. So if this is equal to this, then we get the flag. But if it's not equal to that, then we get nothing. So that's just a really basic example of that sort of logical mindset. But a lot of really interesting bugs come from abusing certain logical pathways. So understanding that just mentally, even if you don't write it down, because I definitely don't write it down all the time because it can be a pain. But yeah, just sort of kind of guessing what's going on the back end and then figuring it out as you kind of probe it more. Or if you get access to the source code, you can just know exactly what's going on. So combining reading code and being able to sort of understand logic, and you just get big hacks. It's that simple. So as I was talking about earlier, sec lists, my favorite collection of word lists. Yeah, that's just a cheeky git clone command. But you get about 500 megs of like word lists from if you do a like just the clone of what's there now and you don't go further back in time, because if you go further back in time you'll probably get more like a gigabyte or two, I think. Yeah, they're pretty fat lists, but they're fantastic. So tools, Burp Suite, my favorite one, Firefox or Chrome, because you're gonna actually need a browser to hack a website. Who would have guessed it? You're gonna want Fuff. Fuff is just like a sort of replacement for some of Burp's kind of lackluster intruder, especially when it comes to the community edition. And Python's probably, or whatever scripting language you want, but Python's my go-to as it's just really simple to debug and really easy to prototype rapidly. So like say if I need to make a custom blind SQL injection like tool or something like that, that needs to process the payload in this way and wait like X amount of seconds every 20 seconds or something like that, then I'll do it in Python. Yeah. So Burp Suite, it's the best, right? It's my favorite. Um, I don't know what else to say other than like very nice and like how much is it? Like, man, this is where Burp Suite just kind of sucks, is because it's too much. It's far too much. Like, I think it's $600 for a professional license for a year. Like, it's crazy. But if you're lucky enough to have your company pay for it, I definitely recommend it. It's fantastic. Or if I'm not suggesting it, but individuals have been known to go and actually source cracked versions of Burp Suite. Um, I'm not talking about the validity of these files, but they do work quite well, as I've heard. As I've heard. Fuff, it's sort of, I don't know, it's a really good alternative for burps in Truda, especially when you're using Burp Suite Community Edition, because you can create pretty much intruder requests, but with Fuff, and you can actually proxy it through Burp Suite, so then you can see all the requests anyway. So then it's literally like having an intruder session running, but it just comes off in your HTTP history. Sure, it does clog it up a fair bit, but you can actually go in and analyze the results there, and it's just fantastic. Another main command line tool that I haven't really shouted out, but it's just like default bash tools. Like, you don't know the power of curl. Curl is all powerful. Um, yeah, it's fantastic. So my main sort of challenge that I wanted to have a look at today is a deceptively simple looking challenge named Spoofy that sort of, I don't know, messed with my mind a little bit until I realized just how simple it was, because it turns out it was something just completely stupid. But it's a really interesting challenge, and it really makes you think out of the box. Um, but yeah, if you don't want to kind of learn how to solve this or kind of see how I would do it, then you don't have to watch this part. But um, yeah, we have already solved it as disk, and I am assuming we are all disk in here, so I think we should be good when it comes to like technically flag sharing. But um, yeah, I think it should be okay. I don't know.
I think it's fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So we got Spoofy open, and we can have a quick read of this. So Clam decided to switch from repel.it to an actual hosting service like Heroku. Wow. In typical Flash fashion, he left a backdoor in. So there's a backdoor in this somewhere, but how are we gonna find it? Like, it's gonna be sneaky, right? So we take a look at the source code, and we got our links there. So source code, and I've just got the source code open here. And then for ease of mind, I've put that into Sublime. So it looks a lot nicer, and we can actually read the code. And then another thing, I've got my Burp Suite set up, and I've also got my Firefox set up. And by browsing to the new Heroku app set up by Calm or Clam, he's saying that he doesn't trust me. What the fuck, man? Oh, sorry, but like, what the heck? You know, like, why not? Just give me the shell. But not getting it. Doesn't trust me. Now, just that quick look straight into. So sorry, I should say this. When you open up Burp, it's gonna be kind of confusing. You'll have all these panels and stuff, but up here on the top, on this bar, you can like switch around. So here, if you go to target and sitemap, you can see all the different websites that like your browser's calling out to, and you can see like all the requests and the actual responses that you're getting. You can have a custom scope here. So if you only wanted to see, say, google.com, you could just press add and be like, just boom, Google. and then it would only show you Google ones, or if you didn't want to see certain URLs, you could exclude them there. There's just a bunch of like issues that like Burp sort of automatically finds and will report to you. You don't really need to worry about them; they don't matter. Proxy. When you first start up Burp, you want to head immediately over to Proxy, go to Intercept, and this will be on. Turn it off, because when it's on, right, and I try to load this website, it's still loading, right? So I go back to Intercept, and I can see my actual request here. So this is where Burp gets really powerful as a tool, because you can actually edit this request in real time. So now I'm trying to get the URL of /abcd. So I'll do that. I'll turn off my intercept, and I'll go to my HTTP history. And then you see in the latest request, number 24, that's just the number of like requests that it's currently up to. You can click on that, and then down here, there's like your original request, and then the response from the server. So right next to original request, you have this. You can go edited request, and now you can see the ABCD, and that's why it's giving us the 404, because when we were with Interceptor, change that to ABCD, and now it gives us the 404. And on the browser, we'll see the 404 not found rendered there. So that's pretty sick that we have the ability to actually like go and edit these requests in real time. So let's see what we can do with that. Just go back, reload this.
It's a good idea to get comfortable with like HTTP requests as well, because they like any web hacking, they come up. You know, it's it's something that you end up seeing quite a lot, and you get really comfortable with.
Because it's like this, it just looks like gibberish, you know. Like, what am I looking at? But yeah, it's just actually some gzipped encoded data that's being sent back to the telemetry of what's this? Yeah, Firefox. I got to turn that off. It's fine. But yeah. So let's have a look at the source code. We can see that up here it's setting the variable flag as a string. This is all Python, by the way, and judging by it, it sort of looks Python 3-ish, just because of the syntax like used. Yeah, when you sort of get more into Python, and just coding in general, you sort of pick up on the subtle differences between not only languages, but the different versions of those languages and the syntax that the developers actually use to writing. And that can actually be a massive like factor when looking for bugs in web apps or any sort of app, because you look, and then say if like they were a Python 3 writer, but they wrote it in Python 2, and then they used the input. That's like RCE right there. I think it's either input. Yeah, it's input, because that equals raw input. I think something like that. But yeah, you could actually pop RCE from that, and that's just because of a simple developer mistake, because they were used to a different version of the same language. So it's really interesting when you start picking up on that sort of stuff. Anyways, let's actually get back to reading this. So here we're setting the flag variable, and this is like a shorthand if statement, but in Python, because we're just setting the all variable. So if this is none, so if there's an environment variable with the name flag, like that exists, that will be the flag variable. Otherwise, it's just going to be this fake flag. So if we ran this locally, we can just expect to see the fake flag when we get the flag. Then for the actual source of the file, what's happening here is this is saying the current file, and we're opening that as a read mode, and then we're setting that as the variable f. By doing it with an with statement, where we don't actually have to close out that file. So once it's done executing whatever code is in here, then it will just continue and automatically close that file. But what's happening here is we're setting the source variable to the actual contents of this file. So by the looks of it, if we double click on this is a pretty cool thing about Sublime Text and most text editors is you can just like double click on stuff. If I can double click on it and see where it's also reused because it will highlight it. So just by doing that, we can immediately jump down here and we can see that there should be a route called source, and that will just send the source. So let's go here /source. Yep, just exactly what we expected. Sadly, no flag. That's not how Python works. Sucks. But it is what it is, and it sort of makes sense when you actually read that because we're actually reading the file and not the file from memory with all its variables and stuff. So yeah. Now what's happening here is we're setting app variable to a new Flask instance, and it has to have an individual, and so people just set it to the name of the file. Then there's a function defined here called text response, which is used for most of the responses, it looks like. Yeah, for all of them. Because these return text response. Then we take a body as a string. That has to be an integer. And its default value is 200. So if we don't send a status code, then so say here, on line 38, we don't send a status code, so it will respond with a 200. But here and like here, and here, we're actually sending a status code. So instead of responding with a 400, when I say respond, I mean this little code right here, and then it's like the error message or the access granted message. So say a 401, it's unauthorized. You're not authorized to get that. But say if it's a 200 OK, boom, it's fine. It's done. You get your response. Or if it's a 404, that's not found. But yeah. And if we actually see this, right? So we're looking at the app right now, and we see that we get a 401 and then I don't trust you. So we can actually go back. We can search for I don't trust apostrophes, but it's here. And we can actually see that that 401 status code is getting passed up here and then into a new response body right there, as we can see, and that's getting returned. So it's just sending that as the body for this response, setting the response content type to text plain, and sending whatever other arguments we send to this function along with the response. So if we could somehow control like a call to this function, then we could actually like inject our own what's it called? Our own kind of arguments into this response object. But it doesn't look like we can do that here. So let's just keep looking down. We'll go back to that I don't trust you, and we'll go back up one line to line 36, and we can see that IP is not equal to 13.3.3.7. So if our IP isn't lit, how are we gonna actually like access this? Because we're always gonna trust this. I mean, we're always gonna get unauthorized. But if it is 1337, we'll get the 1337 haxa and the flag. So assuming that would be the backdoor. So to trigger this backdoor, we actually need to make our IP, or yeah, by the looks of it, yeah, we need to somehow make this variable called IP equal to 1.3.3.7. And we'll just jump right back up to the main route of this and just go through that because we know that that's our target now. So we look at the main page and we see that it's returning a response, what's it called? Response object. That's just what that means there. So here we're just doing a request statement. If x dash forwarded is in the request.headers. So we'll just Google what is this. So Flask request. So we'll just go to this and we can sort of like look through the Flask documentation. So request dot and then Flask dot request. So the request objects is an instant request. So we'll look at that. And there's a lot of reading to do here, I'm not gonna lie. But we can see that these are the common descriptors. So yeah, this is like request dot say referrer or request dot content type or request dot headers, right? So now that we're here, let's look for headers. All right. So, oh, accidentally went back. There we go, environ headers. So let's have a look at this. All right, so this is the actual object of the headers, but it looks like it's just a dictionary. So by reading this, yeah, it looks like it's just a dictionary, right? Yeah, so we do that and then we're accessing this because if it's a dictionary, we should be able to do that by kind of ID, or we could do like request.headers.get. And then if the header doesn't actually exist, then it will return none or whatever we actually return to it. So for this, we need to specify a header. Well, I can't type. That's okay. So x forwarded for, and then what's it doing here? So it's making a list of strings and it's splitting it by just a comma and then a space by the looks of it. So what if we do like 1.3.3.7, then that? But you know what I just realized, and is what is incredibly interesting, is that if we go back to this challenge, and we look at this, we get I don't trust you. Now, this is where actually coming back and reading comes into handy, because we take a look at this if, and then we take a look at the else, right? And we can see that if this header wasn't set, then we would get this response. So please run the server through a proxy. But what's the response that we're getting? It's I don't trust you. Yeah. So that's kind of indicating to me that somewhere this header is being set. Because if that didn't exist, then we would be getting that. So somewhere this is being set. So let's have a look at the response headers. We just sent this to repeater just so then we can use burp. Burp's nice. Sorry if it's a bit bright. If you want me to turn on dark mode, just let me know. But
please.
yeah, so okay. Let's try that soon. There we go. Okay, much better. Now we're in it. Sort of hacker mode. If only these were green. Anyways, so we get our get request and we get our response of authorized. But let's have a look at some of the other response headers here. we're seeing a server of Gunnycorn or G-Unit. And that looks like it's version 20.0.4. So that sounds like a pretty late version. We could Google that and look for exploits, but it's kind of pointless at this point because we know that there's a backdoor in the code, so we know that we don't actually have to attack this server, or we might have to, but we can presume that we don't have to yet. We can see the server's actually sending us back a date, so that would be the current time on a server. We can see content type. So if we remember back in the code, we set the MIME types text/plain. If you change that, then you would get a different content type here. You can see the content length. So if we select that, if we select this exact length, there might be hidden characters on the end just because we can't render it here, but I don't think there is. So that's a pretty safe guess that that's going to be 21 characters. Maybe there might be an enter on the end, like a enter character. But there's this one interesting header right here, and it's called via. And if we Google this, like what does this actually do? How are we going to find that? And the answer is Google. So what is Vega appearing in HTTP headers? HTTP proxy library. And then we also have a link. One of my favorite document sites is the MDN Web Docs. It's like Mozilla Developers Network Web Docs or something like that. And pretty much they just document everything HTTP and like all the different protocols on it. It's mad. But if you really want to get into documentations, go read the RFC. I don't recommend, but it's good. So the via header is a general header added by proxy. So that's interesting that it's added by a proxy, both forward and reverse proxies. So it looks like what's happening here is this is actually a proxy. So yeah, this guy's just linked that, and it's a Heroku proxy/load balancer. So we know that this is actually like made for Heroku. And if we remember back on the Angstrom challenge, Clam has actually just switched to using Heroku. So it's all making sense, right? This must be what they're using. So we look back at this and we can see that that's going to be a response header for a proxy. So we know that there's a proxy there, and we know that it has to be adding the X forwarded for header. Otherwise, we would be seeing this. So what happens if we specify our X forwarded for? Let's go back into Burp Suite, and then we don't need all these other headers, so we can actually just remove them. And one thing here you want to be sneaky of is see how there's 3 line breaks. So a HTTP request ends in a new line carriage and then a new line carriage, and then so what that means is 2 enters. So after your HTTP request, there always has to be 2 enters. If there's a third one, it's going to treat this as no data, and it's going to actually set the content length because the actual line characters. So what we're going to do is we're going to add this x dash ordered for 1.3.3.7, and then make sure that there's those 2 new lines after request. We'll send it off, and now it's telling us that our first IP and last IP aren't right, so they're not going to serve that request. Let's go back to the code, and we'll go first and last. So we can see that that's coming in right here. So we're actually almost hitting the check now for that. but how can we bypass this bit of logic? I don't know. What if we try doing this beforehand? So say if we have a trailing one. No. What if we add a second one? Because that might be the first and last IP. No. What if we do 1337? No. So we're still getting the same responses either way, which is really interesting because think this, right? If there's a proxy and it's going to be adding this header automatically, so it will be making this request for us, right? And say if there's like, I should get up like slides or something to draw with, but I don't know. So what's going to happen is the proxy is actually appending our IP address. So like say if my IP address was 1.2.3.4, it's going to be making this request to the actual G-Unicorn server, but we're actually hitting this proxy server, right? And if it's adding this header, and what if we actually set our own header? So we this like 1.2, but we want it to be 1.3.3.7, right? We want it to be that and then space 1.3.3.7, because then the first IP is the last IP, right? Or even if we could just get it to be that is the first and is the last IP. But I think there might be something funky with this that we can abuse. But yeah, no matter what's happening is when we make that request, the proxy is actually taking our IP of that we made the request with, and it's creating a new header, and it's gets this X forwarded for header, and it gets the list of headers that we send. So we're sending the hostname header, and it checks, is this the hostname header? No, it's not. And it checks the X forward header, and then it would check this one. Is this the header like that one? And if it is, what's going to happen? So because it's the first X4, what happened? Oh, actually, no, it's not. It's it's really strange. I actually don't know exactly like why proxies behave in this way because it's different with every proxy. But what happens is with Vega at least is it gets our IP and then it puts it at the front, or sometimes it might put it at the end. So now our original X folder 3.3.7 becomes 1.2.3.4 and then 1.3.3.7, if you get what I mean, or like 1.3.3.7 and then 1.2.3.4. Yeah, so it's automatically adding that header for us. So how are we gonna abuse that? Like now that we know that this is our next sort of problem, because if we can't actually control where it's going to be like splitting and the actual positions they're going to be split in, how are we going to actually hit this block of code? So that's what we're going to try and bypass on this. So let's have a look at this Stack Overflow question really quickly because there's a little hint here. Some people say that first up in the list and some people say last. So reading that, it sort of hints towards that it's doing this, that like IP 0 and IP -1. So the last one and the first one, and if they're equal, it'll go do this. So I don't think that's going to be a hint. I think that's actually a sort of distraction to make you more confused, I want to say. Yeah. So I'm not going to look at it. I'm just going to do what I think I should do for this challenge. So going back to here, we have this proxy request, and going back to that other idea of like the first and the last IP, how are we going to influence that? If the proxy is adding that, does anyone have any ideas?
A second header, like a duplicate header.
Well, potentially. All right, let's give it a shot.
Because if it like adds it to the end of the first header, and then you have a duplicate header, maybe when it passes the request, it'll put the value from the second header and tack it onto the end of the first.
Yeah. Okay, so let's send that off. Okay, so what's happening here? Okay, so
Like,
what I think we need to look at here is actually this splitting functionality.
yeah.
So let's look up the MDN for X4. Let's go back here. X forwarded for. And then yeah, now we're at the kind of header page for it. And so what's the syntax for it? So it's the actual client, so my IP address, first proxy I hit, and then the second proxy. So what's happening here is we send it like our client IP address, and then the proxy is going to be appending the proxy's IP address. So either way, we're not actually going to be able to manipulate it based off like that basic thing. So yeah, but this is something that keeps coming up. This comma and then space, and it seems like it's sort of a requirement since it is in the documentation to have that comma and space. So what if we can do some trickery? Like, so we get our client IP, so we want that to be this one. So we'll put a space after that, and that should be our first IP address. What if we have nothing there? Or 1.3.3.7? Is that just going to work? No. Okay, that didn't work. So we'll get rid of that. And then since we want this to be the last one, what if we do that? I don't know, how's that going to work? It's going to be 3.7, then like 2.3.4, and then because it's another header, it's going to actually append it. Because what's going to happen is the proxy is going to build this X forwarded for, and then it's going to check the next header, and it's going to be an X forwarded for again. And then it's going to just add this. So 1.3.3.7. And do you see what I see there? I see a first and last IP that much. So let's send this off. Boom. Boom. So I hope sort of that made sense, and I hope I could sort of explain my kind of workflow and sort of how I approach these kind of logic problems. Please send me questions. I want to answer them because that means like you're actually interested, so it's good. It's good. Um, yeah, I don't know what else to say, but just get to hacking stuff. I don't know.
Nice.
I kind of tuned
Yeah,
out
no,
there
sorry.
a little bit, but I just wanted to ask you a question. Could you do
Yeah.
it in one line?
I don't think so, because the way that the proxy's handling it is it gets the like your IP address, and it'll be like, oh, this is a new X dash 4 header, right? And so it gets our IP address, and then it's going to check for the other headers that we provided, right? So if this already existed, then it's going to get this IP. That IP, and then put it there. And then what happens is it will make that the main X forwarded for, right? But then hold up a second, there's another X forwarded, and this is its data. So it copies that data and just sends it straight to the back. So it's sort of like a queue.
But that's what I
And
mean. Like if you had a comma space at the front and then a comma space at the end, and then your juicy IP in the middle in just one header, would that work?
let's try it.
Well, no, because the way the proxy works, proxies will always append an IP onto the end of the X forwarded for header, but they'll only ever do it onto one. So that's kind of the sneaky exploit, is that you can get it to append the IP onto the first X forwarded for header and then use the second one to then inject the leet IP that we want or whatever. So I don't think it would work with one line. That's how it stumped me for ages. Yeah. It's pretty interesting challenge. Yeah. Yeah, nice.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Is there anything anyone wants to hack on? Like, do?
Can I just say, if that made absolutely no sense to you,
That's the point.
called Web Application Hackers Handbook, which will answer all the questions.
It's that's good.
Exploits aren't supposed to make sense.
If you want to get paid, they should.
Yeah. This is my first meeting I've been to here. What is we doing? Like, what CTF are we doing?
Angstrom.
Are we all in a team effort towards this?
Yeah. There's account details.
Okay.
CTF chat.
Yep.
But yeah, that was just like one of the sort of web challenges that I was. I thought it was cool, so wanted to share it.
Because I've done some like messing around with broken web applications, OWASP and stuff, but nothing on this scale.
Yeah. So what I really liked about this challenge is it sort of is almost a real life sort of thing that you would cross, because you don't really get to interact with proxies a lot. And I think it's really interesting exploiting that actual logic bug. And it's sort of something that's not really covered with CTFs. But it's definitely gets you thinking more that logical side, and like how different sort of infrastructure components or components of a web server might actually work together. So that was my thoughts behind this. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the challenges, and the red ones are the ones that have already been completed.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I might get into that.
Yeah, it's a bunch of fun, to be honest. You can sort of get lost in it for a little. Yeah, it's good.
Picking away at it, trying to find something.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. I'll have a look at that.
Yeah, no, it's all sweet. Yeah, thanks guys for coming. Guess talk to you guys later. I need to go have a sleep.
All right, well, thanks for that, man. Much appreciated.
It's all good. Have a good one, boys.
See you, bro.
What's up?
Going on?
Hey, man. How's everyone?
Slamming my head.
Yeah, not too bad.
Oh, jeez. I haven't seen some of you guys in ages. Hits. Liam. I found out Liam short for William, by the way. Jordan, what was wrong with your computer?
Wait. My
What was wrong with it? Yeah. Wasn't it like overheating? That sounds like a Terran problem.
Oi.
No, I'm just
shut up.
I'm just being dumb and literally throwing shit at the wall to see if it sticks. It has not stuck.
Oh, jeez.
It'll be fine, I swear.
Let's get rid of it, man. Wait, Terran, are you going to the bar tomorrow when you land?
I don't know.
Do you get a ticket?
Isn't that on Friday?
I thought it was Thursday.
Ah, it's on Friday.
Yeah, damn. Is it?
Yeah, you're cooked, man.
As if you guys are going to CrashCon, man. Bullshit.
What's that? No,
I don't know why you keep like reaming on it. Like, ASO is 10 times worse than CrestCon.
No, bro, I don't know. Yeah, no, I just because I was making the joke that I bought tickets to CrestCon, and then I realized that you guys are going to B-sides and some shit, and I'm like, oh fuck. That's alright. I've sold my ticket. It's okay.
Jeez. I wonder if it's good though.
I mean, I'm sure depending on you can probably get value out of it. I suppose.
I don't
All
even
about
know
how you look at it.
I don't even know if Chris
No
applies
idea.
to ICF. Wait, Taryn, where'd you see that the ICS DFIR challenge? And who's building the infrastructure?
I don't know.
Better
I don't know
not
why
be,
you ask questions.
it better not be Dragos. I'll get banned.
Sucks to suck, dude.
No. Where's it? Can you share me a link?